Welcome once again to IrishTV.us. That will now be the official name of our show, matching our website. And no matter what day you're watching us, we want to wish you a happy St. Patrick's Day. We have some great Irish music for you later in the show, but first, I'm especially pleased to welcome to IrishTV.us author Mary Pat Kelly. We met Mary Pat at Brian Boru's, Forest Park's newest Madison Street pub. And Mary Pat is, of course, the prize-winning author of that hugely popular novel, Galway Bay. Our reporter, Katheryn Morley, interviewed Mary Pat about her very latest novel, Of Irish Blood, now in bookstores.
Hi, I'm Katheryn Morley for Irish TV US, reporting from Brian Boru's pub in Forest Park. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Mary Pat Kelly, author of Galway Bay and her newest novel, Of Irish Blood. Thank you so much for being with us, Mary Pat.
Thank you, Katheryn.
Your first novel, Galway Bay, is an epic story covering your great-great-grandmother's life and emigration to America. What was your inspiration for writing that book?
I grew up in Chicago and very, very proud of being Irish, but without too much knowledge about my own family history or even the history of Ireland. The first song I ever learned was Cheer Cheer for Old Notre Dame, and I thought that was the typical Irish song. and McNamara's Band was the next one, and they both had the same message. Whether the odds be great or small, Old Notre Dame will win overall. And my name is McNamara. I'm the leader of the band. Although we're few in number, we're the finest in the land. So that's how I grew up, that there was nothing better than being Irish. Fantastic. But Ireland itself was kind of a dream. It wasn't like a real place. And in 1969, when I'd saved money from my first job and was going to travel in Europe, I didn't even put Ireland on my itinerary because it would have been like going to Brigadoon or Nirvana or something. So my first place that I landed was London with my friend because of the Beatles and Carnaby Street. And we found out that the cheapest way to stay in Ireland, to stay in London, was to rent a room in somebody's house. So we saw an ad, we called up the number, and the woman said yes, that she'd rent us a room for a week. And she was very happy. She said American, she likes Americans. But when we got there and knocked on the door, she opened it up and she said, "Oh, girls, I forgot to ask your names." And my friend said, "I'm Mary Beth O'Hara." And I said, "I'm Mary Pat Kelly." And she said, "Irish?" We said, "Yes," because like I said, I grew up thinking there was nothing better than being Irish. And she slammed the door in our face.
Oh my gosh.
And this was 1969. But when I look back, I thank her because it raised my consciousness. And that started me thinking about, well, what is it to be Irish? And a few days later, there was a poster up advertising a special trip to Ireland to attend a special performance of Waiting for Godot because Samuel Beckett had just won the Nobel Prize for Literature. Now, neither Mary Beth nor I had ever heard of Samuel Beckett, but it starred Peter O'Toole, and we had definitely heard of Peter O'Toole, and we decided to go. And when we arrived, it was a very cheap fare, and when we arrived, there was a bus to take us into town. And the buses in London, we'd had a terrible time because they were these very stern conductors, and they'd come up to you, you had to know where you were going and what was the fare. We were always messing up. And here comes the bus conductor, same uniform, standing in front of us, and we were looking through our purses trying to get money, and he said, "Would you ever relax, girls? You're home." And I thought, wow, how does he know? But my friend, red hair, freckles, and so the next morning when we got up and went out on the streets of Dublin, I realized I was home because the faces looked like people in Chicago. And I went to church and I said to my friend, "This is the 10 o'clock Mass at Queen of All Saints. I mean, I know these people." So that really started me on my search. Because when people would ask me about my own family, "What county are you from?" I'd say Cook County, because I didn't know. And it got to be embarrassing not to know where my roots were. So I started the search, and it took me almost 40 years to find the exact place where we were from. And during that time, I did documentaries about Northern Ireland, John Hume, who would go on to win the Nobel Peace Prize. I got my doctorate in Irish Studies. But it wasn't until 2002 that I stood on the place where Honora, my great-great-grandmother, was born. And then I really ached to tell her story, to find out the details. because I had realized then that she was escaping the Great Starvation. And without her courage, I wouldn't be here right now.
Right.
So many of us wouldn't be here right now without the courage of that generation.
Who did you rely on most for your family history research?
Well, my father had a cousin called Agnella, Sister Mary Aragina. She was a BVM. She lived to be 107, right? So when she was about in her late 90s, she finally retired. She taught first grade for 75 years. I mean, that's sainthood. You know, they don't have to have a ceremony. That's sainthood. Now, I had known her all my life. You know, we used to get holy cards from her, visit her every once in a while, but I never asked her questions about the family. But now, when I was doing this research, I realized she was born in 1889, so she must have known the people. So I said to her, she knew my great-great-grandmother. She knew Honora, and Honora didn't die until 1899, and Agnella had actually lived with her when her father died. She and her mother had moved back with the family. So she had real stories about this woman who had survived the Great Starvation, who had brought her children to Chicago. But of course, when I asked her, you know, what did she say? She said, well, they didn't talk about it, which was very common. The pain was so deep. But she did give me one line, and it was what I started Galway Bay with. She said that Honora used to say, we wouldn't die, and that annoyed them.
Yes.
That there's some kind of resilience, and there was often a woman that decided, no matter what the circumstances, her children would not die.
If you have a comment, suggestion, or question about today's Irish Journal TV, give us a call at area code 708-366-4665 or drop us an email at irishtv@ameritech.net. Call or email today because we look forward to hearing from you.
Galway Bay was an exciting and emotional novel to read. Was writing of Irish blood a sort of a similar experience?
You know, it was a different experience because Galway Bay, I felt like it was 40 years of kind of pent-up energy and thought and dealing with the Great Starvation. I mean, when I found that quote from an English official that said, 1 million have died, I fear it's not enough, we have to hope another million, when I really took it in, the complete inhumanity. I mean, to have 1 million people starve to death, it's not like a tsunami sweeps them away. It was over a period of time. It was really, really difficult. There were times when I was writing it when it was just overwhelming. And also I started to feel the loss of things like the language. And so that was a very personal kind of wrenching journey. And then I kept telling myself, but we're here, we survived, I have all these cousins, you know. So then when it came time to do Of Irish Blood, it was a little easier because I started in 1903. It's based on inspired by the life of my great aunt. She was one of the new women, she had a job, she was friendly with my great aunt and my grandmother. So I was able to talk a little bit about these young people, and they grew up in Bridgeport and Brighton Park and that area, and the dances and the fun. I mean, they had moved out of survival mode into kind of making it. And so that was great. And then part of family lore is that she spent a year in Paris. So I thought, well, I should have a chapter about Paris. But when the character gets to Paris, she doesn't want to leave. So that was fun, to go to Paris and do the research. And years ago, in the late 70s, I found this place called the Irish College in Paris, which was founded in the 16th century, and it's where the Irish went to study. The priests and lay scholars when the penal laws forbade Catholics to study in Ireland. And they still have this wonderful library, and they have all these fantastic things that remind you of those years. And so I thought, maybe she could kind of find that place, and that would be a place where Irish expatriates would meet. So I was able to put Maud Gaughan in and Countess Markovitz, and so I had a great time with this one. And then, of course, I had to come to 1916 and the Civil War, so
Yes.
then that was very wrenching.
In fantasizing your history and family history, how were you able to remain true to your family's story and also the history?
Well, in Galway Bay, what happened to them, some I knew from stories in the family, but everything that I put in happened to somebody, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. Like, there's the brother Patrick who's mm-hmm. involved with the revolution, and I don't have any details about that in our family. I mean, there are stories, but I made sure that everything I put down was historically accurate, that it actually happened. In this one, I took liberties with her life. In real life, she went to Paris as a buyer for Marshall Fields, but here I have her escaping from a bad relationship. While I was writing this book, a friend of mine was working with victims of domestic abuse, and she told me this really scary statistic, that during the 10 years of the Vietnam War, more women were killed by their partners than soldiers were killed in Vietnam. So I thought to myself, and there's been so much about that, and then while I was writing it, I thought, what would really make her leave Chicago? Well, if she was involved with an abusive boyfriend. So I added that. That was completely made up. But then again, in Paris, I made sure that the people that I had her meet actually were in Paris at the time, and that the historical characters are true. But whether how they interact with her and everything, that I made up.
Galway Bay was an exciting and emotional novel to read. Can we expect the same from Of Irish Blood?
I think so. This also starts the rise of Ed Kelly, Honora's grandson, who would become the mayor of Chicago, and how he gets involved in politics. And so that has a kind of a level of excitement that wasn't in Galway Bay. I mean, I love to, read and think about Chicago politics. And one of the quotes that I kind of forgot that I wrote was that the character said, we were raised to revere politics because in Ireland, if our people had been elected, the food would not have been exported if we'd had a voice. Mm-hmm. So political life is very important to the Irish, as we know.
Yes. I heard talk of a Galway Bay miniseries being made. Is that something that's happening?
Can we both knock on wood? Jim Sheridan, the wonderful Irish director, and a New York producer called Jean Demanian, who's originally from Chicago, optioned it. I did a screenplay with his daughter, Naomi Sheridan, and so it's in what they say in development. Right now, Jim is shooting a movie in Ireland with Rooney Mara, so that kind of takes precedence, but I think that's a good thing. Maybe she'll be Honora.
Wonderful.
And I wanted to say one thing. Galway Bay was so well supported in Chicago that it went to #1 on the Chicago bestseller list,
wow,
which delighted the publishers and me. So if everybody goes out and buys Of Irish Blood, it will become a bestseller. So that would be really great. The other thing was the title. It is not about vampires,
Okay.
It comes from a quote from a speech that Maud Gonne gave in Chicago, where she said, 20 million Americans of Irish blood, surely enough to free Ireland. And the people in Chicago, members of the Irish Fellowship Club, were very involved in financing and helping with 1916. So this is a Chicago story.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katheryn. It was a pleasure.
Of Irish Blood is in bookstores now. As a big fan of Galway Bay, I am very much looking forward to reading it. I hope you'll go out and get a copy and do the same. For IrishTV.us, I'm Katheryn Morley.
Now you can watch Irish Journal Television online. Simply browse to our website, IrishTV.us, and watch shows like this one anytime you choose. We have now made Irish entertainment available to you 24/7. Don't miss in-depth articles and other new features we're sure you'll enjoy. Watch us anytime. Remember, it's IrishTV.us.
everybody. Once again. So very much, the Seven Nations. Appreciate you spending your St. Patrick's Day with us here tonight. Can't wait to see you guys again. Good night. God bless you. Thanks. Good night, Albany. Thank you. Good night. Thanks for being great hosts. Thanks.